Okay, this is now on our YouTube page streaming, and let me check on the status of the messages. Yes, it is sending still, but it is already 5:02, and I want to respect the time of our presenter and then also of our community members who have already joined us. So I want to first say welcome to this presentation. This is a presentation that we are providing to you in partnership with Riverside County Office of Education's CareSpace. And I'd like to ask our presenter, Ines, to introduce herself.
So hello everyone, my name is Ines. I am a marriage family therapy trainee with CareSpace, but I'm also a training specialist. So two roles in one, which means double the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you for being here, Ines. And to our families, we are going to launch a poll. You should be seeing it now. What we'd like to know is actually, yeah, we'd like to know just three questions. What level of education what level of school is your child in? Are they in elementary, middle, or high school? And then just to kind of get a sense of who's in the room, this is all confidential. We'd like to know, does your child receive special education services, and are they an English learner? Just to kind of guide us a little bit more through our presentation. Thank you. We've had one person do the poll. Ines, we have an elementary school aged child here, or parent here, two elementary school aged parents here. So thank you for that. That's going to be up for just a bit more. But on behalf of the School Board of Education here in Alvord Unified School District, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your partnership. We know that there is so much that goes into the fruitful development and education of a child. And at Alvord Unified School District, we have a big, broad range of supports, very talented staff members. But we can't do it alone. We can't do it without you. So we always want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Because even though you're spending maybe an hour here, half an hour there, 45 minutes at whatever meeting, it might not seem like that much, but over time, it really adds up over the 13 years. 13 years, that's a long time, that your child goes from kindergarten through 12th grade. So all of those little, in Spanish, we say granitos de arena, those little grains of sand, it really adds up. So thank you all for being here. Ines, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. The majority of our families are either in elementary or high school. Ines, it is all you.
Cool. Okay. So with that in mind, I will be focusing, because this is a larger presentation, I will be focusing a little bit more on the elementary age and some on the high school age. I will go into the middle school age. For my people who had high schoolers, it'll probably make sense in terms of like mood swings, a lot of like the hormonal changes, right? But for today, we're gonna really be defining what a milestone is and why it's important. They're categorized by four groups essentially, which is the social aspect of learning, learning what is language and how to communicate, also looking at how the brain develops at this stage and what it's developing, and then just looking at how the movement really impacts future movement within a child's life. So again, we're going to be just kind of also sprinkling in some positive parenting tips. I will give you guys some information from a therapy perspective. So I tend to work with the elementary, actually I tend to work with all of them, elementary, middle school, and high school. So just some parenting tips on how you could really listen to your child while still being a parent, right? There's this idea of I'm not going to be my child's friend, I'm their parent, but you could actually kind of get away with being both. So
And
starting off,
Ines,
oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that our families know, si necesita esta información en español, en la parte inferior de su pantalla verá una opción que dice Interpretation y ahí puede cambiar el idioma de inglés a español, o verá una esfera, un globo que dice Interpretation. Si no ve la esfera, verá tres puntos que dicen More o más y ya puede cambiar el idioma a español. Muchas gracias a Ivonne, que nos está apoyando. Thank you, Ines. Sorry for that interruption. I'm very interested in what you're about to tell us because I would tell my daughter, I have a 19-year-old now, like, I am not your friend, I am your father, right? So now you're saying I could have done both. Maybe I was a little harsh on her. I'm interested. Go on.
That's always a fun part. But looking first at like the developmental milestones, the reason why we're kind of phoning in on these is that they're skills that most children tend to reach by a certain age, right? So we think of their first smile, their first laugh, their first step, them waving, but we don't really stop to think about how that's so impactful for the rest of their lives, right? So they reach these milestones not only by support through people around them, but just by doing little things every day, right? So it's looking at how they play. It's looking at how they learn, how they speak, how they act, right? So we are going to go into some tips and tricks for kind of spotting some of the milestones, but also how to encourage some of them. So if you're kind of thinking like, why do I need to monitor a milestone? Like I already have a lot of work as a parent. Now I have to like look at this too, right? It's not necessarily like keeping track on a checklist, right? It's just making sure that certain things are done within a certain time period. We'd look at this in terms of, is the child able to pick up a Cheerio, right? Is the child making eye contact with me when I'm talking to them? So it's kind of looking at these things, and a big reason as to why it's good to start to identify them is so that we could look at early intervention so that we could better support them, right? So for example, if I was to get a client and mom is saying, my child doesn't like to eat foods that are really mushy, and then on top of it, when I try to talk to them, they're not looking at me, right? They're kind of looking off and they cover their ears when they hear really loud noises, and they're 3 years old and I don't know what's going on, right? I would probably say, this is not only a developmental aspect, but it could also be the sign of something else, for example, the autism spectrum disorder, right? So at that point, it's nothing to be alarmed for the parent. It's just saying, like, thank you for kind of noticing these little things that might have seemed off to you. Now we could see how to better support this child and how to cater to them in a specific environment. So when we're looking at milestones, there's all these different categories. We have early childhood, which we're going to kind of pass through a little bit because we are catering to more of the middle childhood, early adolescence, and some of the adolescence. So we're looking at 2 through 5, 6 through 11, 12 through 14, 15 through 17, and then looking at that 18, because especially now with the change in economy, the change in everything that's going on, a lot of the plus 18-year-olds are still at home with parents, right? So how do you even navigate having an adult in the house with you also being an adult, but also putting down the authority of like, yes, you're an adult, but I'm a parent and you're my kid, right? So how do you kind of figure that one out? So again, looking at the four main aspects, we're going to start with physical, just because this is the easiest one to see. From them being a baby to them starting to grow, getting the growing pains, starting to walk, right? Physical is how they use movement in their body, and it includes certain little milestones like being able to pinch, right? Being able to be on tummy time. So when they're on tummy time, are they able to lift themselves up? Are they able to jump, right? Certain little things like this. You then go into language, where it's looking at how a child is going to express their needs and how it gets your attention, right? So language in the sense of a child knows that if it cries, you're going to come rushing to it, right? That's how it's going to start to pick up on certain cues like language. They're also going to pick up on tone of voice. So they know that if you talk to them in a certain tone of voice, oh, my parent is happy with me. But now my parent's talking to me in like a really tone of voice that I don't like. They're kind of upset at me. I'm going to start to cry now, right? A really important thing with language and bilingual children, their brain, the plasticity, which is what makes it kind of grow, is a little bit better than someone who would just speak one language, because what the brain is actually doing is it's kind of processing two separate things at the same time, where a brain who has one language is processing one thing, right? This one's processing two at the exact same time. So if there are people who speak multiple languages in the home, baby's actually going to benefit from this. So what this means is cognitively in the long run, the person with the dual language in the home is actually going to process things a little bit quicker, also depending on other factors like their environment, their food, home life, right? But just brain plasticity as a whole, this is also counting ASL. So if you're someone who is verbally talking to child and on top of it, you're doing ASL, child is also going to soak up and kind of gain that brain plasticity. But now we look at cognitive. Cognitive is going to be, how does a child solve problems, right? If a child, again, looking at problem solving from an infant, if they're hungry, they know that if they cry, they get the attention, right? If they're in class and they know that they want maybe attention, even though it's in a negative way, they might do something to disrupt the class, but they're getting the attention, right? So really looking at how does this child problem solve to get what they want. Also looking at what's going on developmentally that might be impacting child's grades in school or the way that child could be thinking, right? And then finally, social emotional. This one's going to be really big in the middle school to high school age range specifically, but it's just looking at how do children interact with each other and with their own emotions. So how do they figure out their emotions? And on top of it, how do they figure out other people's emotions? So again, we're going to kind of skip this one a little bit, or we're just going to go through it very quickly so we can get to the other ones. But early childhood is typically the preschool years. It's looking at the ages of 3 to 5. This is the age where they're still kind of cute, but they're also kind of getting on your nerves a little bit. You're like, I love you, but mommy needs a break right now. Please go see someone else, right? Again, in terms of the developmental journey, these are important because they're milestones, but they're also building blocks. So if you have a child start off on tummy time, and then they just kind of work their way up, right? They start to walk, they start to grab things, they start to jump around, they start to run around, they just kind of build on themselves. So with age 2 children, right, they're going to start to notice when you're upset or when they become upset. And a lot of it is going to be in the face. So the way that they're learning social emotions and social rules are going to be just by paying attention to their surroundings and how other people react and say, oh, well, they're reacting like this, so I should do the same. In terms of language, this is actually where they're going to start to point at things, right? This is also where they're going to start to ask, like, oh, more. And they become a little bit self-aware. They're like, what's this? What's this? Right? You could also play with them and be like, oh, what are these? Right? And they'll be like, oh, your ears. In terms of cognitive milestones, this is where they start to understand how certain things like buttons and doorknobs work, twisting them, pressing them, kind of understanding like, oh, something happens if I twist it, right? For developmental, in terms of movement, they're running, they're kicking, they're kind of walking, right? Again, this is the age range where if you do notice that your child isn't making eye contact, that they don't like the feeling of certain things, they kind of freak out over loud noises, any kind of characteristic where you're like, I don't think they're meeting the milestone, right? This is actually the perfect age to do screening for autism. So looking at 2.6, close to 3 years of age, this is where they're going to kind of start to want to play with other children. You might see that they play with other children, but like side to side. We call this parallel play. They're not involving the other child, but they're in the presence of them, right? They start to say a little bit more words, and they also start to be more aware of themselves. So they'll start to say words like I, me, we. So they start to figure out, oh, I am a person amongst all of you, and we're all like this person, right? So in terms of language, they're starting to use that. In terms of cognitive milestones, they're going to start to do simple problem-solving skills, which is where as parents you might freak out a little bit. You might see your kid on the counter because they moved a chair to go grab like some snacks and you're like, what are you doing? Get down from there, right? And they're like, I just wanted some snacks. So this is where problem solving really starts to kick in. In terms of movements, right? This is also where they start to just kind of take off their jacket. They're kind of moving around. They're like, I don't like this shirt. Take it off, right? So again, this is where the fun begins as a parent. Looking at age 3, this is where they start to learn to calm themselves down. So this is where they start to self-soothe, right? If you drop them off, they're upset, something happens, 2 minutes later, they're fine, right? This is kind of where that starts. Also looking at languages, this is where they start to do the back and forth. So they know that it's best for them to wait while you talk. And then there's that nice back and forth where they start to mimic conversations, right? This is also the fun age where they're asking, why? But why? But where? How? But why? I don't get it. Why? Right? They're just really curious at this age. So they're kind of really abusing those words and that form of language to kind of just engage their curiosity, right? In terms of cognitive, this is where they start to figure out like following rules, following directions. They start to see that if you kind of do something for them, like draw a circle, they'll actually kind of do it. And they're like, oh, wow, I could do it if I follow you, right? And then in terms of, again, movement, this is where they start to do some more arts and crafts, like putting things on a string, gluing things down. In terms of more complex movements, they're able to use a fork and kind of distinguish it from a spoon, things like that. Age 4, this is where they really start to like to play pretend, right? You could see them kind of doing this with pets if you guys have any pets in the home, right? Looking at children kind of seeking other children, right? Hey, can I play with so and so? Well, they're not here. I know, but can I play with them? Right? They start to say a little bit more complex sentences, more than from before in terms of cognitive as well. They start to be able to like draw people a little bit better. They could kind of start to tell stories. You see this with kids if they really like a show that they're watching, they'll try to like explain it to you. And it might not all be there, but they're like trying their best to explain it. Like, yeah, and I watched Sonic, and then Sonic beat up this one guy, and you're like, okay, which guy, right? And they're like, yeah. For physical movement, this is kind of where they start to, again, get more into that complex form of movement where they actually also want to help. So if they see you cutting, they see you doing something, they see you like pouring water, they want to help. They're like, I want to do that. I want to mimic that. Can I do that? Right. So this is where they get into that more complex wanting to work certain things out movement wise. And then age 5, at this point, they're starting to go to school, right? So they're starting to learn and understand what it's like to follow rules, what it kind of means to do a rule. They also kind of want to put on like little shows for you, show you what they learned, right? They start to make up stories, right? Like, yeah, this one time, like someone was stuck in a tree and they had to get them down, and you're like, are you sure that happened? And they're like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, I swear, right? They're also able to keep the conversation going a little bit more smoother than previously with like the age 3, right? At this point, they're starting to learn to count. They're becoming aware of time. So if you tell them, no, we're not going to the park today, we're going tomorrow, they're going to know tomorrow. And tomorrow, they're going to be like, why aren't we at the park? You said tomorrow. Today is tomorrow. So let's go, right? So they start to be very aware of time at this point. And then movement, of course, it's just starting to get better. They're kind of in preschool at this point, so they're just kind of running around doing certain things. So this is where I'm assuming most of the elementary school population is going to be at. So we're looking at ages 6 through 8, right? They are going to show some more independence from the family, but it's still going to be that really cute form of independence of, I want to do that too. Can I give it a try? But they are going to be more self-aware. Now, what this means is they're going to be more able to build friendships and kind of focus on teamwork, right? So you might see this, for example, if they have siblings and wanting to kind of mend certain relationships, kind of looking at the age 6 to 8 range in terms of saying like, you really hurt your sibling. Oh, I'm sorry, right? And then doing like the little hug. This is what you tend to see in this age range. In terms of language, they're a little bit better at expressing thoughts, expressing feelings, like that really hurt, I'm really sad, right? Kind of crying it out, things like that. But they have a little bit less focus on themselves and it's more of a focus on others. So for example, if a friend is hurt at school, they're going to be very concerned about how hurt that friend is. They're going to get that friend up, take them to the office, make sure they're okay, right? The other thing too, in terms of cognitive milestones, at age 6, they should be able to concentrate at least on a task for at least 15 minutes. This one's a little bit tricky now because of the new generation and the technology. And it's also a little bit tricky because I know a lot of teachers are saying that's just not possible, right? But it tends to aim for the 15-minute mark. As a therapist, something that we do say is that if your child is able to watch a 15-minute YouTube Shorts video, then they're able to pay attention in class for 15 minutes. It's just the choice that they're making of this is boring and this isn't, so I'm going to be paying attention to the one that isn't, right?
And Ines, if I may, you brought up a good point in terms of the focus that a student has and the teacher's expectations. I want to let our parents here know that one of the things that teachers do, and they do very well here in Alvord, is they allow for brain breaks. And we know that, as you well mentioned, a student, depending on their age, won't be able to just sit and focus on like a presentation like we're doing for an hour, I mean, let's be honest, for us, it's a little bit challenging, right? And so what teachers do, and I can tell you what I used to do, is we have a lot of good resources and like videos and dance movies and things like that. So we would get the kids up, say, all right, the energy here is a little bit low. Everybody get up. We're going to do a stretch. We're going to do a little dance. We're going to go for a nature walk. There's all sorts of different strategies to make sure that our kids are physically able to retain and concentrate. There's a silly saying that says that the brain can only take what the bottom can, right? If your bottom is tired and your body is tired, your brain is going to just say, I can't anymore, right? And so teachers do know that, and they act on it as well. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, even when I give presentations or when I have my group of kids with the elementary specifically, we also incorporate some yoga, right? We have them stretch, we have them get up, we have them jump around. That way they're able to get some jitters out. And again, it kind of wires their brain so that it's like excited. So then when they sit down, they're like, oh, I'm excited, right? So
Yeah.
again, it's finding ways to kind of really work with that for the most part, but it is kind of like this expectation, but also just be mindful that not all kids are going to meet these milestones. So for some kids, it might be 15 minutes. Some kids, it's like 20. Other
Yeah.
kids, it might just be 10, right? So kind of working with that too, and finding out what really works.
And there are also, I mean, it's like a teacher talk. Teachers, we love acronyms. It's TPR. It's total physical response. So I've been in kindergarten classes or transitional kindergarten at our 4-year-olds, where they're learning the letters and they're making the letters with their bodies and they're jumping and they're acting out like a sound or a particular word that relates to that sound. So definitely kids are all the time moving, especially at the little ages, because they just can't just sit still. And so we know that.
This also goes into the movement physical development aspect of it. So they have a lot of energy at this point. So again, as a parent, if you're kind of struggling with any of the other areas or you feel like it could be better, it might need a little bit more help, you could incorporate areas where they're really good at it naturally. So again, for example, using the movement to your advantage, right? If you kind of want the child to focus on something, maybe find a way that the child could focus on it through movement, right? And just kind of using these as hacks within themselves, right? So then we get into 9 through 11. So this is going to be the fourth up until potentially the sixth grade mark. So they're not fully in middle school yet, but they're kind of getting there, right? There's a little bit of sassiness maybe coming from them, but it's not fully there. So you're a little, at this point, you're like a little nervous. Looking at this specific age range, they're all about their identity. They're all about their friends. Friends are so important to them, especially if, you have a group of girls, their girly pops are going to be everything to them. If you have a group of boys, their boys are going to be everything to them, right? So this is also where the body is going to start to anticipate some of the puberty changes, which is again where you're going to start to see some of the foreshadowing from middle school in terms of that puberty change. So you're going to start to face some more challenges academically at school. At this point, it's going to be where you start to notice, you know what, maybe I'm not that great at math. Maybe I'm not that great at English. But again, puberty has a lot to do with this one, right? It's kind of hard to sit in a classroom when there's like these weird changes that are starting to go in your body and you don't even know about them, right? In terms of movement, again, growth spurts. So this could be in association with weight gain, weight loss, muscle growth, right? Looking at, especially for girls, if is there any tenderness in any areas of the bodies? Does anything hurt? Is anything cramping, right? And then just looking at how hormones are going to release into their bodies, especially the hormone in the pituitary gland, which is like somewhere up here in the brain. How is that going to impact the rest of their kind of functioning for the most part? Something that we additionally always say in regards to all of these changes, if you have children who are kind of like weirded out, they're like, why is this tender? Why am my head hurting? Why do I feel like this? This is actually a really good way or a really good age point to start progressing into conversations revolving sex and revolving their bodies, right? Because at this point, they're still a little bit curious, and then you could kind of start to name certain things, right? Like, well, you're going through puberty. Well, what's that? Well, it's when this and this happens, right? If that's available to you and if you feel comfortable having that conversation, this would be a good point. But if not, again, it's completely up to family values.
What what you just said something that really prompted my mind. What resources are available to parents to even have these sort of discussions? I mean, you said the S word, right? You said sex. You talk to your child from age 9 to 11 about sex. I mean, I know that might make a lot of parents, myself included, very uncomfortable. I had that conversation with my daughter a lot older. Where do we start with this?
My supervisor likes to say that you actually start talking about it from birth, right? So you kind of start to name certain body parts
Hmm.
with the correct terminology as well. So it's not, oh, this is my princess parts. No, you like say the full on, like, this is your vagina, this is your penis, right?
Hmm.
A big reason as to why in the therapy field as well, we tend to advocate for this. It just creates another level of self-awareness for, I'm going to say the student because I'm assuming all of you guys have students, right? It creates another level of self-awareness for the student, but it also starts to foster their sense of independence. Another thing, it also tends to mend relationships a little bit better. What we tend to see in the therapy room is that students who weren't exposed to topics from an early age, or even I have a lot of students who were just not told anything at all. And then they come to me and they're like, Miss, what is a period? How does a period work? And I'm like, oh, you're curious about that. And they're like, I have no idea what's going on, right? So they end up feeling some sort of shame and some sort of guilt revolving around their body, revolving around like these natural just methods of like functioning, right? So a reason why parents are kind of instructed or not instructed, recommended a little bit to just touch on these topics, it fosters independence for the individual. And it also starts to create a sense of control for them, right? They know what's going on with their body, they know how to do it. In terms of resources, that one's really tricky. We do have certain workshops, but we don't have an explicit sex workshop because we are under the county and it is the County of Education.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think you said something very interesting and very I think we appreciate it here. It's up to families and family values when to have that conversation. I think I totally misunderstood the suggestion. When you said talk about sex, I thought about relationships and intercourse and things like that. And I said, well, I don't know if I would have been comfortable talking to my daughter, but you mean more like body parts and
mhm.
changing bodies and all that. Oh, okay, understood. Okay.
Yeah, I guess just sex as a whole, right? Like what makes up a person, certain, I would say like intimate body parts would be like another word for it, right? If you kind of want to go the more traditional route, or yeah, just more like medical field route for certain terminology.
Yeah.
But we do just recommend to start to kind of teach kids about those certain areas. Again, it's like fostering independence, it's fostering the sense of control that they have over their own body.
Yeah.
Because imagine just being, I'm pretty sure a lot of us, we went through these weird changes. We don't even know what they are. And then we go into adulthood and it's like, I didn't even know what that was. And now I have to figure out what this is. Like now I'm confused, right?
Yeah, and if you have a child, then you have to help them figure it out too. So just a couple of things. We have a comment from Missy Kaidos. Hi, Missy Kaidos. Thank you for being here. She says, yes, naming body parts by their true name is okay, but what's not okay is imposing topics onto our students when the child's not ready developmentally speaking. Additionally, maturity matters. I think that's a great comment. Maturity does matter. And then just so that our parents are fully aware, we as a school district, we don't have these levels of conversations with students without, parents being aware. So if depending on the age, I know that California does have a standards of health education, but parents, you will be made aware of all that ahead of time. And then you do have the option to opt out.
Yeah, I was gonna say from what I remember too, if there is an option for sex ed classes, parents also have the option to not have their
Yep,
students attend. So
correct.
again, this goes based on family values, where if you feel like, you know what, I would rather do this myself, I would rather you learn a different way. Again, just looking at kind of like what are my family values and which ones would I like them to have, right? In terms of maturity, as a therapist, again, I have students come to me, so it's not anything that I personally probe. But it is just something that, again, if the students feel like maybe they don't have anyone to talk to, and again, I'm like the school therapist, they're like, can we like ask you about this, right? But that also depends on level of maturity, right? So another good point, some students are eager to find out what's going on in their body, Other students are pretty like relaxed. They're like, I got this, I'm fine, right? So just kind of looking at all these different factors, family values, like would I rather do it? Would I have someone else do it? They could kind of look at it on their own. They have technology, right? And also, is the child mature enough to seek that help for themselves? Are they going to bring up that conversation themselves? But some fun positive tips for parents. So in therapy, we use a lot of I statements, and we do this for two specific reasons. One, an I statement is going to actually remove kind of like that blaming, right? That, well, you did this and you did that, right? And it's also going to assume responsibility. So this is kind of where I mentioned earlier, you could be a parent, but you could still kind of order that line of friends, right? So for this age range specifically, it's really important to listen to what they're saying, right? And I mean in the sense of, I'm going to give you guys an example. If there's a person that you wouldn't really like your child to hang out with, and then they come home from school and they're like, oh my God, I made a new friend and we're going to like hang out and like I'm having such a good time. And you have red flags going off in your head, right? As a parent, the first thing you tend to do is, I don't want you hanging out with them. I don't know how to feel about that. Like, no, you can't go. You're going to stay home, right? But what we tend to do is incorporate active listening, right? By asking open-ended questions. So what we did in the past was impose judgment. I don't like that person. I don't want you hanging out with that person. I'm judging, right? With active listening through open-ended questions, you're actually going to get more information out, right? Oh, really? What's so cool about them? What do you guys like to do? Oh, what are you guys planning on doing when you hang out, right? The person isn't getting asked a yes or no question. It's an invitation for the conversation to continue, right? Oh, they want to know more. They're interested in me. They're interested in me and my friend. Remember, this is the age group. Me and my friend are everything. So they're interested in me and my friend, right? Yeah, so like, what'd you say you guys were gonna do when you hang out? Like, it sounds like fun. What are you guys planning on doing? Oh, okay. And who's gonna be there? Oh, just me and them. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm curious. And this is where the I statement comes up. Now you listen to this person. You let them know that you were listening and you were engaged and you were open to the conversation. Now you could throw in your I statement. I feel concerned, right? And I want to know a little bit more about them, right? So now, again, you're not blaming. You're just saying, I'm concerned. I want to know more. Now your kid isn't gonna fight you back on, well, I already told them I was gonna go, and right? No, you're just letting them know, I'm concerned, I want to know more. Again, opening up that invitation. So this is just some tips on positive parenting. The statement formulation is, I feel, I feel concerned, I want more information, right? And then from there, again, based on like parent dynamic and what you feel works best after that point, but that's just typically how you get it started. You listen actively with open-ended questions, no judgment, right? Because it is an open-ended question, you're just inviting the conversation. And then you follow up with your I feel, I want. And then from there, again, use your own judgment as a parent to say, what am I going to do next, right? Now we're going to get into more of the middle school population. I don't think anyone in the poll had middle schoolers, but I'll go over it anyway. This is the population that is going to be more concerned about their body image, their looks. So because of this, they're going to be more influenced by peer groups. They're going to lean less towards the parents, which mean you might start to wonder, why is my like 13-year-old not affectionate to me and they're yelling at me, right? Like, I am your parent, don't yell at me, right? But this is also the age group where, again, body image. They have all of these external things kind of going on in their head as well. This is also the population that's going to feel a lot of sadness. They're going to feel a lot of depression. For my boys, right? They might not feel the sadness, but because they might mask it with anger, right? So they might always be angry, always be upset. But what's really underneath that anger? Another thing too for this population is when we start to see a lot of like the increases in drug use. So for example, again, as a therapist, if I'm asking someone when was the first time you used substances, they might say 14, 13. I tried it once and then, never did it again, maybe did it afterwards occasionally, however the case. But it tends to start around this age. Again, we're looking at so much external stimuli, peer pressure, right? Wanting to fit into your friend groups. For cognitive ability, they have the ability for more complex thoughts and they're a little bit better at expressing their feelings, but other aspects, kind of like social norms, might impact this. They are going to go through the heavy transitions of puberty, right? So your 12-year-old is going to look very different from your 14-year-old, right? Depending on genetics as well, depending on food, right? Depending on environment. But this is going to be where you see a lot more of the heavier emotional kind of messiness of that hormones, just because there's so much going on. So positive parenting for this specific age, right? This is the age where you want to be more direct, right? If you have that feeling that something is going on, just be a little bit more direct with your child, right? Are you using? Are you having, right? Having those open conversations and not really leaving room for interpretation if you have that feeling, right? Or if you kind of have that fear. Another important part of this specific age is to really get to know your child's friends or your teen's friends, right? Again, their identity is so solidified in their friend group. So who the friends are will kind of tell you a little bit about their identity, right? That's kind of how the brain of this age group operates. If I want to be, I don't know, they tend to say girly pop. If I want to be a girly pop, I'm going to hang out with the girly pops, right? So kind of use that to your advantage as a parent. And again, you're going to continue to do some of the active listening, open-ended questions, and a lot of the I statements. I will say this population is harder to get to, again, just because of the developmental aspect where they're feeling a lot at the same time. So also parents, you're doing your best job with this age group. So please also be easy on yourselves.
Ines, you keep saying a girly pop? What's a girly pop?
Girly pups are what some of the younger girlies just call kind of girls in general. They call them girly pups because they're like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe them. It's like they like cute things and they're besties and they like to do skincare and watch TikTok and they just call each other girly pops. It's kind of like saying like, oh, my friend, right? But they say girly pop because
Okay.
it's cute.
I used to be in and hip and cool, and I'm out of touch now. I'm getting old. That's where we're at. We do have a couple of comments in the chat. Um, Huda says, my 9-year-old daughter's having this sort of attitude. Yeah. All right, Huda, get ready. I hope you're taking a lot of notes. And then somebody in iPhone says, every time my son tells me he met a new friend, I always say, nice. How did you meet? What did you guys do? So on and so forth, but never know. I'm just aware. And then Blanca says, I know a majority of my son's friends. So I think that's really important to know who your children's friends are, so that you can kind of help to guide them. Because as Ines said, at this age, the friends are more important than you are, and what the friends think is more important than what you think as the parent. And so they are going to be highly influenced by their friends. So just being aware of the sort of activities that they and their friends kind of like to get into. And then I really appreciate Ines saying now's the time to be very direct on your line of questioning, either your directives. I mean, sometimes, as a father, I felt that I did have to tell my daughter no, and she was very upset with me for a bit of time. And eventually once the anger and emotions kind of subsided, we had conversations and we got through it. We always got through it, even though it felt like we weren't ever going to recover from this fight. We always got through it. But it was up to me and up to her mom as well to say, this is okay, this is not.
Also something that you guys could use for your advantage for this age range, they love to gossip. They love to share stories about what's going on. So fully use that to your advantage, right? If they're kind of telling you something, I mean, me and my friend, and then they said this and they said that, right? Just kind of tune in. Like, what's going on in that friend group? What are they doing? Do I agree with this? Does this align with, us as a family? And just kind of use that to your advantage. Now we're going to move into adolescence. So this is the 15 to 17. So this is going to be the high school population. So high school population, this is also the population where they're going to be more interested in romantic relationships and sexuality. There has been research saying that younger generations are actually less interested in sex. So this could work to your guys' advantage as parents, right? They're less interested in sex. So what are they more interested in then? Are they more interested in romantic relationships, in those friendships again, right? Or in just having wholesome relationships? So this is going to be the age group where there's actually less conflict with parents. So again, an advantage, right? What does a friendship mean to them? What does it mean for them to feel valued, right? And these are some of the questions that as parents, you guys can kind of start integrating into there, right? So what does it mean for you to feel valued? What does it mean for you to feel like you are taken care of, right? And starting to integrate these questions. This is also the demographic that's going to start to seek more independence through driver's license, through after school activities, through sports, right? Through potentially like even having the idea of, you know what, I kind of want to go off to college. You know what, I want to do a trade. I just want to go work directly, start doing something, right? So opening up that communication so that you guys could kind of like figure that out, right? The other thing is this group will feel a lot of sadness and depression as well, specifically based on environment. So what's going on around them. And because of that, that could result in poor grades at school. This is, again, it could result in alcohol or drug use, unsafe sex, or any other problems. So this is the age range where you do want to be direct with your questionings, right? You do want to have that open sense of communication or give them resources to where you feel is best. But in terms of cognitive milestones, this is where they also start to define work habits, right? So if you have them on a schedule, you have a routine set for them, this is going to work to their benefit cognitively, right? They're going to learn to distinguish priorities, time, certain things like that. At this point, they're more likely to kind of complete the puberty cycle, specifically for girls. Men might continue a little bit later just because they are historically starting puberty a little bit later than girls are, but for girls, for the most part, they're kind of done at this point. And I also work with high schoolers if there's any specific questions about them. But looking at some positive parenting with them, right? So again, if there are any concerns in behavior, if you're a parent and you were like, you were not the same person from 15 that you are at 17, what's going on, right? Again, ask about the behaviors. I will say this is also one of the age ranges that is higher in the suicide ideation rate, which ideation basically means that they're thinking about it. So they could potentially be having thoughts like, for example, I just don't want to be or no, what's a good example? They might say, I don't see myself making it to my 21st, right? I don't see myself going to college or just even being there, right? So if they start to say certain things like this, it could be a concern, but it is ideation and not intention, right? Something that is tricky though, this age group jokes a lot about any minor inconvenience in terms of saying like, I'm gonna kill myself. And it's like, maybe you should say something else, right? So if there is that kind of all or nothing, that's what we tend to call it, all or nothing mentality, right? Kind of speaking to it a little bit about like, is there something that you could say that isn't that? Or like, do you actually feel that? Do you need help? Do you need me to listen to you? Like, what's going on, right? In terms of this one, it's going to be kind of like the same basis for the other one, just active listening through open-ended questions, because you do want to kind of gauge into what's going on in their life so that you as a parent are prepared to make a decision, right? To kind of either help them, kind of guide them, say, you know, like you need to calm down a little bit, right? Again, because at this point they're gonna be kind of coming back to you after the middle school period, this is the chance to start showing some affection again, right? So if before you guys were really cuddly or you were really big on words of affirmation, this is the point where you would start to tune into that again. Something important too, though, if your teen is interacting on certain like chat rooms, right? Let's say Discord, TikTok, Instagram, it is just kind of a good idea to encourage them to make a good decision and just let them know like about digital footprints. You know, like what you're posting right now could be reposted in the future and you might not even know it, right? So just encourage them to know that digital footprint is a thing. Maybe even look into some of the different legalities, right? In terms of saying, you know, like what not to repost, what not to resend. If it's, for example, sexual explicit content of a minor, right? Maybe go over some of the long-term implications that that could have. So again, I'm at a school site with high schoolers. We did have a student get expelled for trying to protect another student, but in trying to protect her by showing an image that was explicit, he actually ended up getting suspended. So there comes this dilemma of, yes, you did the right thing morally. However, by the law, that was not okay, right? So there's a lot of gray matters too, also just guiding your teen. And then we go into early adulthood. We included this one because, again, we have a lot of early adults that are continuing to live with parents. The economy is not good to them, right? So how do you even navigate having an adult who is telling you, I'm an adult, I make my own decisions, and you're like, but I'm your parent, so you're under my roof, right? For the most part, they move into having adult relationships with their parents at this point. They kind of see their peer group a little bit less important, where friends are still going to be a big aspect of this age group of the 18 plus, but it's not going to be as big as the middle school, right? A big reason is because they're going to start to frame their values. So those values that you guys had mentioned in the middle school age group, right? They're actually going to start to reflect on them and start to form them on their own and say, you know what, I really liked that my parents, included family and made it such a big like aspect of my identity. I'm going to continue that, right? But with this, they also might say, I really didn't like this value that they gave me. I think I'm going to kind of walk away from that one, right? So the hard part as a parent is going to be saying, okay, I'm going to respect it, right? That's going to be the hardest part. But again, with active listening and using the I statements, right? I feel like that value is important, but I'm going to respect it. But it is just tricky to start to see where they're picking certain values and you're like, please pick that one, not that one, right? In terms of this one as well, they're going to have an established body image. So a lot of the behaviors from the previous one, in terms of like the body image, right? The eating, the weight gain, the weight loss, not going to be as there anymore. And they are going to be a little bit more understanding towards you guys as parents as well, because they are going to start to feel more empathetic. That's so nice, right? For cognitive milestones, you're going to start to see them take on some more roles and responsibilities. It could be through school, it could be through work, right? It could be through helping out around the house. They're going to start to form that identity in the sense of, I'm going to help you, right? In terms of autonomy, right? They're going to start to kind of make their own decisions. Again, might irritate parents like, you live under my house. Why are you making your own decisions, right? But that is something where we could kind of look at conflict navigation. At this point, though, they're fully mature, right? At this point, the only thing that they're waiting to finish maturing is actually their brain. That one doesn't finish maturing until the age of 25. So if you ever sit there as a parent and you're like, why are you making these stupid decisions, right? It's because this part right here that focuses on our thinking, it's not done yet. It's not going to be done until 25. So I could guarantee that at 25, the relationships with your guys' children is going to be so much better because they're going to be making such good decisions and they're going to be thinking critically, right? So there's hope. There's hope. But at this point, relationships do start to improve. Just just hope. Just hope for the 25.
And if I could, Ines, you've given us so much to think about and digest, but just as a reminder to our parents here in Alvord, every single school in our district has a counselor. We also now have two school social workers at the district level. And they each have, well, there's a total of 10 school social worker interns. And these counselors and social workers, what they are there to do, and the reason why they're so impactful is that if your child is going through some sort of social, emotional, or mental wellness crisis, or just needs a little bit more support, they're able to reach out. But also, if you as a parent or you all as a family unit need additional support, please reach out either to the counselor. You can reach out to my office. My name is Alejandro Cisneros. And what we can do is we can get you connected with people like Ines. We have good partnerships with RCO, with Riverside County Office of Education. We also have partnerships with different organizations like the McKinley Center, the Wiley Center, Care Solace, and we're able to make a referral out to you so that you can get mental health support for you and your family if that's needed. So although Ines is giving us a lot, and I say us, not you, us, because I am a father in this exact range. Ines, my daughter is 19. And so when you're talking about, she wants to be independent, but she isn't yet, I felt that. But if I don't want the takeaway for our families to be, here's the things that you need to do on your own. No, if you do need more support, please reach out to us and we'll get you connected. Ines?
Yeah, so just again, some more positive parenting tips for the most part, right? In terms of kind of telling the child at this point, the 18-year-old, right? Like, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? Instead, just kind of question, like, I'm going to use the example of some people that I know personally in my life, right? Where they're like 19, 20, don't go to school, don't work, right? So instead of kind of being like, what aren't you, like, what are you doing, right? You might kind of go, like, what's some of the values that you have? Like, what is your goal in life, right? And then just kind of tap in from there. And then again, use your parent skills to evaluate what's going on. In terms of resources, I am going to speak a little bit quickly again about what we do at CareSpace. If you guys are interested, we also do family sessions, which what a family session is, again, if it becomes a really big load, a family session is essentially going to look like having the people that you want for a family session. Doesn't have to be the entire family. It could be, for example, mom, son, right? Could be sibling, right? If there is conflict between siblings, we have had it before, right? But whoever you want to define as a family, and what the therapist is going to do is they're going to say, like, what's something that you guys want to work on? Well, I want to work on this and I want to work on that, right? And the first thing that typically tends to happen is you tend to work on your communication and then you dig a little deeper. But again, this is all done with a therapist in office. They're going to teach you a lot, right? And they're also going to teach you that sometimes, like, it's not just the parent, like, also you're teaching the child to have accountability, right? There have been sessions where I have to tell children, like, your mom is doing a lot, your dad is doing a lot. How does it make you feel that you are continuing to, disrupt them or something, right? Well, I feel bad. Okay, so you feel guilty, right? So kind of working through that. So accountability on all ends, not just on parents, and also working with children, right? We do have children that don't like to pay attention, right? And that's when they come to me. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, also teaching children how to navigate certain emotions, navigate certain events that might have happened, right? And in turn, that's going to help the dynamic with parent. And then you guys are going to be able to parent at a rate where you guys aren't as stressed or aren't as feeling like I have to work and then I have to come home and then I have to parent and then I have to do this and I have to be divided between everyone, right? So also giving you guys a little bit of a break.
Hey, Ines, we received a question. I received a direct message. Let me read it to you. My son gets upset every time I tell him to do his homework or to study. He ends up telling me not to worry, that that's his problem, but he has all these missing assignments and missed tests. What can I do? I've tried helping him and I end up seeing some answers are wrong. And he says they're correct because the teacher gave him the answers because they went over it together, and I read the passage and I see different answers than what the teacher gave them. So when a parent, the message that we give to parents often here at the school district is to help and guide their child with their homework if they're able, and then also to check in on the in the Aries parent portal and the grade book to see the missing assignments. So this parent is doing their part, but the child is putting up a lot of walls. What suggestions do you have?
A couple things going through my mind right now. One, for example, if you have a child that is using, for example, silence, or if they're using kind of withdraw methods, that is their form of control. So they're trying to control the situation for one reason or another. Clinically, I don't know like enough information to make a judgment, right? So a child is trying to have control on the situation one way or another. Something that I tend to see, but again, I do counseling, right? Some of my ADHD kids have a really hard time concentrating on certain tasks. And another thing is they have a hard time concentrating because they're at home. And there's so many fun things to do at home. And they have their Lego sets and they have like their video games. And it's like, I don't want to do this like assignment when I have my Lego set right there. I'm gonna go play with that instead, right? So also looking at this might sound a little rough, right? Also looking at what needs to be taken away so that could get done, right? So that is one of the harder things. And what we typically tell parents is when you enforce the concept of you're going to get this done, and when you can, you will have access to this, the behavior will get worse before it gets better. So you're going to get tantrums, you're going to get yelling, you might get hitting and screaming and threatening, right? But if you just keep doing that consistently, it's gonna get better because they're gonna realize, wow, my tantrum didn't do anything, and now I'm still failing, and I didn't get to play with like my PS5. Like this kind of sucks, right? So over time, they're gonna learn, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna kind of give up, do it, and now I could play, right? So just two things I would clarify is that could be a sense of control for a child. And then also just reinforcing consequences.
Yeah, that follow through is very important. If I told my daughter, if you didn't do this, I was going to take away her phone or something, I needed to do it because otherwise she would, kids sniff us out and kids know when we're going to back off or not, right? And so I needed to. But then also on the other end, if I told her when you do your work, when you do your chores, whatever, you get it back, and she did, then I had to do my part as well and give it back. But then also one thing that I'd like to share to this parent, in addition to what they can do at home, thank you, Ines, for those suggestions, is to reach out to the school's principal or school's counselor. They often have advisory groups or they have tutoring sessions. The counselor can do check-ins. You as a parent, you can request weekly grade checks or bi-weekly grade checks, or you just kind of figure it out with your teachers and your principals. So I know that as a teacher, I would have students who had missing assignments, and then we would collaborate with the parent and the counselor and the principal and all of us. And one of the tools that we used is that the student would have to go in and do weekly grade checks. So we would print up their weekly reports, send it home for a signature. Parent would sign it, acknowledge that it was received, and that way we kept the communication kind of flowing. Thank you. Elizabeth says it takes a team. It definitely does. And then if your child, I'm not sure what age they're in, but if they're in middle or high school, I think the AVID program would be a great program for a student who's having these sort of struggles. AVID does do weekly grade checks. They do weekly tutorials, and it's all built into the class. So it's a way to support a child with note taking and just how do you successfully be a student? So thank you for that, Ines. It's 5:59. Do we have any parents who would like to ask any last question right before we end off? No, I believe, Ines, you've covered it all. There are no questions. So parents, thank you so much for joining us today, taking an hour out of your very busy schedule to hear from us. Please let us know. Feel free to send me an email, send me a text. My information is all on Parent Square, and it's on our Facebook and it's on our district website. Please feel free to reach out to me if there is a particular subject that you would like us to address. But thank you to Ines and Riverside County Office of Education's CareSpace for this presentation. And of course, we cannot do this without Ibon and the interpretation team. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.